"Get down on the ground, old man." The command carried authority, but the badge was fake. Madison Hall didn't flinch. He stood tall as an old oak at the ranch gate, gripping a yellow deed of ownership in his calloused hands. Behind the two uniformed thugs, Gloria Peterson screamed that he was trespassing on her property. She had no idea she was threatening a retired county clerk with 30 years of experience, a man who could dismantle her entire fraudulent empire with one phone call to the right people. Before this confrontation settles, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from today, understand that Gloria just made a fatal mistake. She brought fake cops to a legal gunfight, but Madison Hall came armed with absolute truth. And when the FBI finally knocked, those counterfeit uniforms would trade for federal prison jumpsuits, and Gloria would learn that 15 years behind bars is the price for playing games with the law. The highway stretched endlessly through the Texas night, and I had been driving for 19 hours straight. My name is Madison Hall, 72 years old, and I was finally going home. The old pickup truck rattled beneath me, its engine humming a familiar song I hadn't heard in a decade. On the passenger seat sat a tin box containing every important document I owned: deeds, certificates, tax records. 30 years as county clerk had taught me one unshakable truth: documentation is everything. My dash cam blinked steadily on the windshield, recording the empty road ahead. Just a habit. The coffee in my thermos had gone cold hours ago, but I didn't stop. Something in my chest, a pull I couldn't name, urged me forward. Behind me, Oregon grew smaller with each passing mile. My sister Eleanor had finally lost her battle with cancer 6 months ago. I stayed to settle her affairs, sell her small house, close her bank accounts. Now there was nothing left to keep me away from the ranch where 4 generations of Halls had lived and died. I remembered the day I left, 10 years ago. Margaret, my wife of 47 years, had just passed. The cancer took her quickly, mercifully, but it left me hollowed out. Then Eleanor called, desperate, the tumor already spreading through her lungs. Arthur, my only son, promised he would look after things. His ex-wife Gloria had recently come back into his life, offering to help manage the property while I was gone. I should have seen the warning signs then, but grief makes you blind. The phone calls with Arthur grew shorter over the years, then less frequent, then stopped entirely. Every letter I sent came back unopened. Every voicemail went unanswered. I told myself 1,000 lies because the truth was too heavy to carry alongside Eleanor's illness. Now, with nothing left to lose and no one left to bury, I needed answers. I needed to see my son. I needed to stand on my own land again. The sun was just rising when I turned onto the familiar dirt road. October light spilled gold across the Texas hills, and my heart pounded as the landscape of my childhood unfolded before me. The same rolling meadows, the same ancient oaks with their twisted branches, the same endless sky stretching to the horizon. But something was wrong. The old wooden gate my father built with his own hands in 1952 was gone. In its place stood a tall iron gate, modern and cold, painted black with sharp spikes along the top. Security cameras mounted on either side tracked my approach like suspicious eyes. I slowed the truck, squinting at the mailbox. The address was correct, Route 7, Cedar Hollow, but the name painted on the side read Peterson Estate in elegant gold letters. Not Hall, Peterson. I sat there for a long moment, engine idling, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I checked the GPS on my phone. No mistake. This was my land. This was supposed to be my home, but nothing about it felt like mine anymore. I stepped out of the truck, bones aching from the long drive, and walked toward the gate. The morning air smelled of cedar and dry grass. Scents that used to mean comfort. Now they felt like mockery. That's when I saw them 2 men in dark uniforms emerging from a black sedan parked just inside the property. They moved with the practiced swagger of authority, hands resting casually on the holsters at their belts. "Sir, you need to leave immediately," the first one commanded, his voice cutting through the quiet morning. "This is private property. You are trespassing." I stopped mid-stride. "There's been a misunderstanding. My name is Madison Hall. I own this ranch. I've owned it for over 40 years. The second officer, younger, with a thick neck and the eyes like chips of granite, stepped closer until I could smell his cheap cologne. "We've been warned about you. Old man, Mrs. Peterson told us everything. She said you have mental issues, that you wander around claiming other people's property as your own. The words hit like a physical blow. Mental issues, Mrs. Peterson. I opened my mouth to respond, but the first officer cut me off sharply. One chance to leave peacefully. Next time, we put you in cuffs for harassment and stalking. Do you understand me? I looked past them toward the house where I had carried Margaret over the threshold on our wedding night, where my father had died peacefully in his sleep with my hand holding his. Smoke rose from the chimney. Curtains I didn't recognize hung in windows. I had cleaned 1,000 times. Someone was living there, someone who wasn't me. Desperation clawed at my throat, and I glanced toward Bill Thompson's neighboring property. We had been friends for 50 years. Surely he would come out, vouch for me, tell these men they had it all wrong. But I only saw a curtain twitch in his window, then quickly fall back into place. No door opened, no voice called out. I was completely alone. "All right," I said quietly, raising my hands in surrender. "I'm leaving." I turned and walked back to my truck slowly, feeling their eyes boring into my spine with every step. But as I reached for the door handle, something caught my attention. Their sedan. No light bar on the roof, no official markings on the doors, no government license plate, just a plain black car that could belong to anyone, and on their chests. The badges gleamed in the morning sun with 3 words that made my blood run cold. I pulled out of the driveway, hands trembling on the steering wheel, but my mind was working faster than it had in years. Once I was out of their sight, I pulled onto a side road and stopped. I reached up and tilted the dash cam toward me, rewinding the footage on the small screen. There they were, the 2 officers, captured in perfect clarity. I zoomed in on the badge pinned to the first man's chest. Texas State Police, it read in bold letters. I stared at those words for a long time. 30 years working with every law enforcement agency in this state had burned every department name, every badge design, every jurisdiction boundary into my memory. Texas Highway Patrol exists, the county sheriff exists, city police exists, but Texas State Police does not exist. It has never existed. There is no such agency anywhere in the state of Texas. Whoever those men were, they were not real cops. They were wearing costumes, playing a role, banking on the assumption that a confused old man wouldn't know the difference. They assumed wrong. I looked down at the tin box on my passenger seat, then back at the frozen image on my dash cam screen. Whoever Gloria Peterson was, whatever game she was playing, she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because I wasn't some senile wanderer who could be scared off with fake badges and empty threats. I was Madison Hall, and I had just found my first piece of evidence. I didn't sleep that night. The motel was a rundown place 20 minutes outside Cedar Hollow, the kind with flickering neon signs and stains on the carpet that told stories nobody wanted to hear. But it was safe, anonymous, and far enough that those fake officers wouldn't think to look. I sat on the edge of the bed with my tin box open, but I wasn't cataloging documents this time. I was planning. 30 years in the county clerk's office had taught me how property theft worked. The forged signatures, the fraudulent affidavits, the slow paper trail that could erase a man's entire legacy if no one was paying attention. Someone had been paying attention to my ranch for 10 years. Now it was my turn to pay attention back. I needed official records. I needed to see exactly what Gloria Peterson had filed in my absence. And I needed certified copies that would hold up in court. Tomorrow morning, I will start building my case. The Cedar Hollow County office opened at 8:30, and I was first through the door. The young clerk's face went pale when I explained what I needed. "Sir, the deed is still registered under Madison Hall," she said, fingers trembling slightly on the keyboard. Relief washed over me, but only for a moment. "However, there's an affidavit of heirship filed 7 years ago by Gloria Peterson. She claimed to be the authorized property manager acting on behalf of the owner's son." I kept my voice steady. "That affidavit is worthless. I never signed a power of attorney. I never authorized anyone." The clerk nodded nervously. "It was used to redirect mail and change billing addresses. If you want to dispute it, you'll need to file a formal challenge with documentation proving your identity and continuous ownership. I requested certified copies of everything: the deed, the fraudulent affidavit, every document with Gloria's name on it. The clerk printed them without meeting my eyes. She knew something was wrong. Everyone in this town probably knew, but no one had done anything about it. I should have waited, should have let the paperwork do its work. But the need to confront Gloria face to face burned in my chest like a coal that wouldn't die. This time, when I pulled up to the iron gate, I wasn't surprised to see her waiting. She stood in the center of the driveway like a queen surveying her domain, arms crossed, flanked by her two uniformed thugs. But the dynamic was different today. She didn't send them forward. Instead, she walked toward me herself, heels clicking on the pavement, stopping just inches from the gate. "Madison," she said, dropping the fake sweetness from yesterday, "I was hoping you'd come back. We need to have an honest conversation." Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Do you know what people in Cedar Hollow think of you? They think you're a monster, a man who abandoned his dying wife to run off with his mistress, a man whose own son had to beg the courts for a restraining order." I felt my jaw tighten. "Those are lies." Gloria tilted her head, feigning sympathy. "Are they? Because I have witnesses who will swear to every word. I have medical professionals ready to testify about your deteriorating mental state. I have 10 years of documented absence while I, the devoted daughter-in-law, kept this ranch alive." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper, meant only for me. "Here's what's going to happen. Old man, you're going to leave Texas. You're going to forget this ranch ever existed. And in return, I won't have you declared legally incompetent. I won't petition for emergency guardianship. I won't have you locked in a facility where they'll pump you full of sedatives until you can't remember your own name." The threat hung in the air between us, precise and poisonous. This wasn't about scaring me off anymore. This was about destroying me completely. Behind her, the older fake officer spoke up, his tone businesslike. "Mr. Hall, we've filed an incident report from yesterday's encounter. One more appearance on this property, and we'll be forced to execute a citizen's arrest for criminal trespass and menacing. The sheriff's office has already been notified of your erratic behavior." The younger one added, almost bored. "Mrs. Peterson has also retained counsel to pursue a civil harassment suit. You show up again, you're looking at court dates, legal fees, and a public record that'll follow you to your grave." They had rehearsed this. Every word calculated to sound official, to make me feel small, to convince me that the machinery of law was already grinding against me. I studied them both carefully. The older one's practiced delivery, the younger one's barely concealed smirk. And there it was, again, the tattoo on the younger man's wrist, partially hidden by his sleeve, a logo. I had seen it on a billboard outside town, advertising a private security firm. These men weren't law enforcement. They were hired contractors playing dress-up. But I didn't react. I simply nodded, as if accepting defeat. "I understand," I said quietly. "I'll go." Gloria's eyes narrowed, suspicious of my sudden compliance. "Smart choice." I turned toward my truck, then paused. "One question. Where is Arthur, my son? I want to hear from him directly that he wants me gone." For the first time, something flickered across Gloria's face, irritation, or maybe fear. "Arthur doesn't want to see you. He made that clear years ago. Accept it and move on." I climbed into my truck without another word, but I had seen enough. The way her voice tightened when I mentioned Arthur, the way her hands clenched at her sides, she was hiding something. And whatever hold she had over my son, it was the key to everything. That night, alone in the motel room, I reviewed the dashcam footage frame by frame, Gloria's threats, the fake officer's scripted intimidation, the security company tattoo, now frozen in perfect clarity on my laptop screen. I was documenting everything, building a timeline, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. 2 lines appeared on the screen. "Grandpa, don't believe anything she says. I'm sorry." My heart stopped. Before I could reply, the message vanished, deleted remotely, erased by someone with access to the sender's phone, but my hands had already moved on instinct, screenshotting the moment it arrived. Arthur was alive. Arthur was reaching out. And someone was controlling him closely enough to delete his messages in real time. I stared at the captured image for a long time. My son was still in there somewhere, fighting to break free. And Gloria Peterson had just made her second mistake. She had shown me exactly how afraid she was of what Arthur might say. Cedar Hollow looked exactly as I remembered, the same brick storefronts, The same American flags hanging from lampposts, the same church steeple rising against the October sky. But the town that greeted me was not the one I had left. I walked into Martha's Diner, where Margaret and I had shared countless Sunday breakfasts, where the owner had cried at my wife's funeral. The bell above the door chimed. Every conversation stopped. Martha stood behind the counter, gray streaking through her hair now, and when our eyes met, I saw nothing but cold suspicion. "We don't serve troublemakers here," she said flatly. Behind her, a man I had known for 30 years whispered something to his wife. She shook her head in disgust at me. I didn't need to hear the words. Their faces told me everything. Gloria's story had reached every corner of this town, poisoning memories that should have protected me. I turned and walked out without ordering, the bell chiming again like a funeral toll. The Cedar Hollow First National Bank was my last chance for concrete proof. I had maintained an account there since 1978, automatic payments for property taxes drawn from it every year. The young banker's fingers moved nervously across his keyboard. "Mr. Hall, your account was converted to joint ownership 6 years ago. Co-owner Arthur Hall." He paused, swallowing hard. "There's also an authorized signatory for withdrawals, Gloria Peterson." I gripped the edge of his desk. "What's the current balance?" Another pause. $47.32. The number hit me like a hammer to the chest. $80,000, my life savings, Margaret's life insurance, everything we had built together gone, drained penny by penny while I was watching my sister die 1,000 miles away. "I need transaction records," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. The banker shook his head. "Court order required, privacy regulations, I'm sorry, Mr. Hall." He wasn't sorry. He was afraid, just like everyone else in this town. I returned to the motel as the sun bled red across the horizon, but the day had one more wound to deliver. A familiar black sedan sat in the parking lot, and leaning against it were the 2 fake officers, no uniforms this time, just black tactical gear, their badges conspicuously absent. The older one pushed off the car as I approached, his smile thin and reptilian. "Mr. Hall, Mrs. Peterson wanted us to have a more personal conversation." He moved fast for a man his size, stepping into my path, forcing me to stop. 48 hours. That's how long you have to leave Texas. His partner circled behind me, cutting off retreat. I felt his presence like a knife at my back. "After that," the older one continued, "we stopped being polite." The younger thug leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear. "That pickup of yours, old vehicles like that. Brake lines wear out. Accidents happen on these back roads. Nobody asks too many questions." I kept my hand in my jacket pocket, thumb pressed against the record button on my phone. "You're threatening to sabotage my vehicle," the older one chuckled. "We're explaining how the world works. Sometimes people who can't take a hint end up in ditches. Sometimes they end up in hospitals. Sometimes they just disappear, and the sheriff writes it off as another old man who wandered into the woods and got lost." He tapped my chest with one thick finger, each tap emphasizing his words. 48 hours, Mr. Hall. Use them wisely. And they climbed back into their sedan without hurry, confident in their power. As the engine growled to life, the younger one rolled down his window. "We'll be watching. Every move you make." The taillights disappeared down the highway, but the threat lingered in the air like smoke. I pulled out my phone, stopped the recording, and immediately uploaded the file to 3 separate cloud accounts. 5 minutes and 12 seconds of explicit intimidation, threats of violence, vehicular sabotage, disappearance, another piece of evidence. But evidence meant nothing if I didn't survive long enough to use it. The call came at 11:47. Unknown number. I answered on the second ring. "Madison." The voice was old, trembling, barely a whisper. "Bill Thompson, I'm sorry about the other day. I was scared. We're all scared." I pressed the phone harder against my ear. "Bill, what's happening in this town? What does Gloria have on everyone?" A long, shaky breath. "I can't talk on the phone." "They might be listening. Meet me at the cemetery tomorrow, 6 in the morning, Margaret's grave. Come alone. Make sure nobody follows you." The line went dead before I could respond. I sat motionless on the edge of the bed, mind racing. Bill had been my neighbor for 50 years, my friend since before Arthur was born. Whatever he knew was important enough to risk Gloria's wrath, important enough to meet in secret at dawn. I walked to the window and parted the curtain an inch. The parking lot was dark except for a single vehicle in the far corner, a black sedan. Engine off, windows tinted, but I could see it now, the brief flare of a cigarette, the silhouette of a man watching my room. They weren't just threatening me anymore. They were hunting me. I let the curtain fall back into place and checked the locks on my door twice. 48 hours. Bill's meeting was at 6. Whatever truth he was holding, I needed it before those fake officers made good on their promise. Because somewhere out there, my son was trapped in Gloria's web, and I was the only one who could cut him free. Bill Thompson was waiting at Margaret's grave when I arrived at 6. He looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders hunched against the cold, eyes scanning the road behind me. "Thank God you came alone," he said by way of greeting. I noticed fresh flowers on Margaret's headstone. "That was me," Bill added quietly. "Every month for 10 years. Someone should remember her." I nodded once, then turned to face him. "Tell me what you know, Bill, all of it." He didn't waste time. The words poured out like water through a cracked dam, 10 years of fear finally finding release. Gloria had arrived weeks after I left, armed with documents she claimed I had signed, power of attorney, property authorization, letters in my handwriting. She presented herself as Arthur's reconciled wife, the devoted daughter-in-law stepping in while I cared for my dying sister. People believed her because they had no reason not to. Then the intimidation began. Anyone who questioned Gloria received visits from men in uniforms. Old Mrs. Henderson asked about the ranch finances. Her barn burned down a week later. Tom Garrett tried to forward my mail. His mailbox was destroyed 3 nights running. "But there's something else," Bill said, pulling a worn photograph from his pocket. "About Arthur." The image showed my son gaunt, hollow-eyed, barely recognizable. I saw him 3 years ago at a gas station in Tucson. He grabbed my arm, terrified, said one thing, "Don't trust her. She has something on me. I can't get out." Then a man appeared big, looked like private security, and led Arthur away like a dog on a leash. Bill pressed a scrap of paper into my hand, an address in Arizona. "It's all I have. Madison, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was afraid." I drove back to the motel with my mind racing. For the first time since returning, I wasn't just reacting to Gloria's moves, I was planning my own. But doubt gnawed at the edges of my confidence. I had evidence, yes, but evidence meant nothing without the right people to receive it, and Gloria had spent a decade building her fortress while I was 1,000 miles away, oblivious. I opened my laptop and forced myself to focus. First, I cataloged everything: dashcam footage, audio recordings, Arthur's deleted text, the fraudulent affidavit. Then I mapped the charges: felony impersonation of law enforcement, securing documents through deception, financial exploitation of an elderly person, federal crimes if they crossed state lines, serious charges, if I could prove them, if I lived long enough to file them. The security company logo haunted me, the stylized eagle I had seen tattooed on the younger thug's wrist. An hour of searching led me to Patriot Guardian Services, based outside Austin. Their website promised property protection and dispute resolution, but beneath the professional veneer lay a history of complaints across 3 counties. Intimidation, harassment, accusations of impersonating police officers. None resulted in charges. Someone was protecting them, and that someone had resources I couldn't match. Worse, if I kept digging, they would know. Men like that didn't wait for legal proceedings. They eliminated threats before they could materialize. Every search I made, every file I downloaded, painted a larger target on my back. But I couldn't stop. Not now. Not when I finally had something to work with. At 2 in the afternoon, I made the call I had been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. Jordan Johnson answered on the 3rd ring. "Madison Hall, that really you?" His voice carried genuine warmth beneath the surprise. Jordan and I had grown up together, football teammates, groomsmen at each other's weddings, friends for over 50 years. He had become sheriff of the neighboring county, a man of integrity in a system often lacking it. I told him everything, keeping my voice steady despite the fear coiling in my gut. When I finished describing the fake badges, there was a long pause. "Texas State Police," Jordan repeated slowly. "Madison, that agency doesn't exist. Impersonating state law enforcement is bad enough, but using a fake federal-sounding name, that's FBI territory. Another pause. I don't have jurisdiction where you are, but I know someone, Special Agent Tyler Richardson, works elder fraud out of Austin. He's been tracking a network that matches what you're describing. Let me reach out. Hope flickered, fragile and unfamiliar, but hope was dangerous. It made you careless, made you believe the cavalry was coming when you were still alone in enemy territory. I spent the rest of the afternoon backing up every file to encrypted cloud storage, emailing copies to new accounts, creating redundancies that would survive even if I didn't. 36 hours remained on Gloria's deadline. 36 hours before those fake officers made good on their threats of accidents and disappearances. I was building a bomb that could destroy Gloria's entire operation, but I wasn't sure I had enough time to light the fuse. And then there was Arthur, my son, trapped somewhere in Arizona, held prisoner by whatever leverage Gloria had manufactured against him. The message arrived at 9:47 that night. Unknown number, but this time it didn't vanish. 3 lines of text and a photograph. Grandpa, I'm at 1847 Mesa Drive, Tucson. She controls me with something I did when I was drunk. I don't know how to escape. Please help me. And the photo showed Arthur in what looked like a storage facility concrete walls. Harsh fluorescent lights, a cot shoved in the corner. He looked like a hostage, not a free man. I saved everything, backed it up twice, and sat staring at the address glowing on my phone. Arizona was 14 hours away. Gloria's deadline was 36 hours from now. Jordan's FBI contact might take days to act. The evidence I had gathered could bring down Gloria's empire, but only if I stayed to see it through. And Arthur broken, desperate, reaching out after years of silence was begging me to come. I couldn't do both, save my son, or destroy the woman who had stolen everything from us. The choice sat in my chest like a stone, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I had no idea what to do. I chose to stay. The decision came at 3 a.m, staring at Arthur's photograph on my phone screen. Every instinct screamed at me to drive to Arizona, to rescue my son from whatever prison Gloria had constructed around him. But Jordan's words echoed in my mind. The FBI was already investigating a network that matched Gloria's operation. If I fled Texas now, I would lose the evidence trail, lose the legal momentum, lose the chance to bring down the entire system that had trapped us both. Arthur had survived 3 years in Gloria's grip. He could survive a few more days. At least, that's what I told myself. The lie tasted bitter, but I swallowed it anyway. I would build the case, coordinate with Agent Richardson, and dismantle Gloria's empire from the foundation up. Then I would bring my son home. The plan felt solid in theory. I had no idea how quickly Gloria would shatter it. The news reached me through Bill Thompson, a frantic phone call just after noon. Gloria had organized a community meeting at the Cedar Hollow Town Hall, an emergency safety briefing to address what she called a dangerous individual threatening local families. The meeting was scheduled for 7 that evening, open to the public, mandatory attendance strongly encouraged. Bill's voice shook as he relayed the details. She's going to crucify you, Madison, in front of everyone. I've seen the flyers she distributed, your photograph, claims about mental illness, warnings to keep children away from you. By tonight, there won't be a single person in this county who doesn't think you're a monster. I thanked Bill for the warning and hung up. Then I sat in silence for a long time, weighing my options. I could hide, let Gloria's narrative spread unchallenged, and hope the FBI moved faster than public opinion. Or I could walk into that meeting and face her directly. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. The town hall was packed when I arrived, nearly 100 residents crammed into folding chairs, their faces illuminated by harsh fluorescent lights. Gloria stood at the front podium, dressed in a modest navy suit, her expression carefully crafted into sympathetic concern. The 2 fake officers flanked the side entrance, arms crossed, watching the crowd. I slipped in through the back door and stood against the wall. Unnoticed for the moment, Gloria was mid-speech, her voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. 10 years ago, my father-in-law abandoned this family. He left his dying wife alone in a hospital bed while he chased another woman to Oregon. My husband, Arthur, his own son, was devastated. He begged his father to come home, but Madison Hall had already moved on to his new life. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Now he's returned, confused and aggressive, claiming property that legally belongs to Arthur and me. He's been harassing us, stalking our home, threatening violence. I fear for my safety. I fear for this community. Murmurs rippled through the audience. I saw heads nodding, faces twisting with disgust and pity. But the pity was for Gloria, not for me. She had constructed her story perfectly, each lie designed to preempt any truth I might offer. If I said Margaret died in my arms, they would call me delusional. If I showed them the deed, they would assume it was forged. Gloria had weaponized my absence, transformed 10 years of caring for my dying sister into evidence of abandonment and betrayal. And these people, my neighbors, my friends, the community I had served for 3 decades, believed every word. I pushed off from the wall and walked forward. The crowd parted like water around a stone, faces turning toward me with expressions ranging from fear to contempt. Gloria's eyes widened when she saw me approach, but she recovered quickly, her mask of victimhood snapping back into place. "That's him," she announced, pointing. "That's the man I've been warning you about." I stopped 10 feet from the podium, keeping my voice calm and clear. "My name is Madison Hall. I was born in this county. I served as your county clerk for 30 years. My wife Margaret is buried in Cedar Hollow Cemetery, and I held her hand when she took her last breath." The crowd shifted uneasily. "I did not abandon my family. I went to Oregon to care for my sister, who was dying of cancer. My son Arthur promised to look after the ranch. Instead, this woman," I gestured toward Gloria, "has spent a decade stealing my property, draining my bank accounts, and spreading lies to cover her crimes." Gloria's expression flickered just for a moment before settling into wounded innocence. "You see," she said softly to the crowd, "this is exactly what I warned you about. The delusions, the paranoia. He needs help, not confrontation." She nodded toward the fake officers at the side door. "Please escort Mr. Hall outside before he hurts himself or someone else." They moved faster than I expected. Before I could react, the younger thug had my arm twisted behind my back, the cold bite of handcuffs clicking around my wrists. "Easy now, Grandpa," he muttered. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The crowd watched in silence as they marched me toward the exit. Not one voice raised in protest, not one hand extended to help. I caught Bill Thompson's eyes in the back row. He looked away, shame burning on his face. Outside, they shoved me into the back of their black sedan without ceremony. The older officer slid into the driver's seat while his partner kept a firm grip on my shoulder. "You just couldn't take a hint," the driver said, pulling onto the main road. "Mrs. Peterson gave you every chance to walk away." And they drove for 20 minutes in silence, heading away from town into the empty darkness of rural Texas. When they finally stopped, it was at an abandoned gas station, weeds pushing through cracked concrete, the only light a flickering street lamp. They pulled me out, removed the cuffs, and took my phone. 48 hours are up," the younger one said. "Next time we see you, there won't be a warning, there won't be a conversation, there'll just be an accident." They left me standing alone in the dark. No phone, no car, no way to call for help. I don't know how long I sat on that crumbling curb, watching the empty highway stretch into nothing. An hour, maybe more. Then headlights appeared in the distance, growing larger, slowing down. An old pickup truck pulled into the station, Bill Thompson behind the wheel, his face pale with fear and determination. "Get in," he said. "I followed them from the town hall. Jordan Johnson called me 20 minutes ago." I climbed into the passenger seat, my body aching, my pride in ruins. "What did Jordan say?" Bill pulled back onto the highway, hands tight on the wheel. "The FBI is officially involved. Agent Richardson has been building a case against that security company for months. Your evidence was the missing piece. They're moving within 72 hours. He glanced at me, something like hope flickering in his tired eyes. "And Madison, they found Arthur. He's safe. He's agreed to testify." Bill's farmhouse became my sanctuary that night. He set coffee in front of me while I processed everything the FBI had Arthur. My son was safe, free from Gloria's cage, and willing to testify against her. For the first time in days, I felt something other than fear. Jordan Johnson arrived within the hour, spreading documents across the kitchen table. "Agent Richardson wants to move fast," he said. "That security company is connected to a larger network, elder fraud, property theft, intimidation across 5 states. Your evidence is the missing piece. But Richardson wants more. He slid a photograph toward me, Vincent Marsh and Derek Cole, the fake officers, both with prior convictions, both employed by Patriot Guardian Services. He wants Gloria on record giving orders, incriminating herself beyond doubt. I understood before Jordan finished. You want me to be bait, he nodded slowly. One more confrontation, FBI watching. If Gloria orders those men to act against you, we've got her. Agent Richardson called me directly that evening, his voice clipped and professional. Mr. Hall, we'll have agents positioned nearby, but we can't intervene until Gloria or her people commit an overt criminal act. You'll be exposed. If things go wrong, we may not reach you in time. I told him I understood. The truth was messier. I was 72, exhausted, beaten down by a week of humiliation. But Arthur had found courage to break free after 3 years in Gloria's grip. I could match that for one morning. I spent the remaining hours writing a letter to my son. Everything I wanted him to know if tomorrow went sideways. How proud I was, how sorry, how much his mother would have loved watching him stand up. I sealed it and handed it to Bill. If I don't come back, make sure he gets this. Bill gripped my shoulder. You're coming back. Madison, this ends tomorrow. Dawn broke gray and cold. I put on the suit I had worn to Margaret's funeral, the only formal clothes I had. It felt appropriate. A final stand deserved proper attire. Bill drove me to within a quarter mile of the ranch, and from there I walked alone, gravel crunching underfoot, the deed clutched in my hand, my heart hammered against my ribs with each step. Richardson's agents were out there somewhere, watching, but I couldn't see them, couldn't feel their presence. For all I knew, Gloria had spotted them already. For all I knew, this was a trap I was walking into with my eyes wide open, but I kept moving. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again. Gloria was waiting at the iron gate, flanked by Marsh and Cole in their fake uniforms. But something had changed in her posture, a tension, a barely contained fury that hadn't been there before. She had heard about Bill's betrayal, about my escape from the abandoned gas station. Her perfect narrative was cracking, and she knew it. You just don't learn, she called out as I approached. I gave you every chance to walk away. I stopped 10 feet from the gate, forcing my voice steady despite the fear crawling up my spine. I have the deed to this property. Gloria, the only legal document that matters. I'm not leaving. Her mask slipped, revealing something cold and predatory beneath. That deed means nothing. Arthur signed everything over to me years ago. This land is mine. I held my ground, though my legs wanted to shake. Where is Arthur? I want to hear it from him. Gloria's laugh was sharp and ugly. Arthur does what I tell him. He signed away his inheritance for a bottle of whiskey. I have every document, every confession. If he contradicts me, I'll have him arrested for fraud. She was talking too much now, her control slipping, voice rising with each sentence. I needed her to go further, to cross the line that couldn't be uncrossed. You can't keep this up forever, I said quietly. People are asking questions. Gloria's eyes narrowed. She turned to Marsh and Cole. Arrest him, trespassing, harassment, whatever sticks. And if he resists, she paused, her smile turning cold. Accidents happen on these rural roads. Make sure this one does. Cole stepped forward, handcuffs ready. My chest tightened. Where was Richardson? Has something gone wrong? I could feel the seconds stretching into eternity, each one bringing those metal cuffs closer to my wrists. Then the morning air split with sirens. 3 sheriff's vehicles and 2 unmarked FBI sedans appeared on the road, lights blazing, converging on the ranch gate with the force of a breaking wave. Gloria's face went white. What is this? Agent Tyler Richardson stepped out of the lead vehicle, badge raised. Gloria Peterson, you're under arrest for fraud, financial exploitation of an elderly person, conspiracy to impersonate law enforcement, and extortion. You have the right to remain silent. Marsh and Cole tried to run, but deputies cut them off within seconds. I watched as handcuffs, real ones this time, clicked around Gloria's wrists. She was screaming something about lawyers, about rights, about how I would regret this. I wasn't listening. The chaos took several minutes to settle. Agents secured the scene, read rights, loaded the 3 conspirators into separate vehicles. I stood motionless by the gate, deed still clutched in my hand, unable to fully believe it was over. Then another car appeared on the road, moving slowly, as if uncertain of its welcome. It stopped behind the line of law enforcement vehicles. The door opened. A thin figure stepped out onto the gravel unsteady, blinking in the morning light, like someone emerging from a long darkness. Arthur, my son. He looked older than his years, the damage of Gloria's control written in every hollow of his face. But he was standing. He was here. Our eyes met across the chaos of flashing lights and radio chatter. Neither of us moved for a long moment. Then Arthur took one step forward, and another. "Dad," he said, his voice cracking on the word. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I walked toward him, my own steps unsteady now, the adrenaline finally releasing its grip. When I reached him, I didn't speak. I just pulled my son into my arms and held on to everything I had almost lost, everything I had fought to reclaim. Behind us, Gloria's screams faded as the FBI vehicle pulled away. But I wasn't thinking about her anymore. I was thinking about the road ahead and the long work of rebuilding what had been broken. The FBI press conference took place 3 days later at the county courthouse. I stood in the back of the room, avoiding the cameras and microphones clustered around Agent Richardson's podium. Arthur sat beside me, still fragile but growing steadier with each passing hour. We had spent those 3 days in Bill Thompson's farmhouse, talking for the first time in a decade, really talking. Not the careful small talk of phone calls monitored by Gloria. He told me everything, how she had manipulated him during his lowest point, how she had filmed him signing documents while blackout drunk, how she had threatened to destroy him if he ever reached out to me. I listened without judgment. My son had been a victim, not a collaborator. That distinction mattered more than any legal document. Richardson stepped to the microphone, his face grave and professional. "Today we are announcing the dismantling of a multi-state criminal network responsible for targeting elderly property owners," he began. The organization operated through a private security company called Patriot Guardian Services, providing intimidation, document fraud, and impersonation of law enforcement officers to clients seeking to illegally seize assets from vulnerable individuals. He clicked to the first slide photographs of Vincent Marsh and Derek Cole in their fake uniforms, alongside images of their counterfeit badges. These individuals posed as members of a fictional agency called Texas State Police to threaten and coerce victims. This alone constitutes a federal felony. The room buzzed with murmured reactions. Reporters scribbled furiously. I watched the faces of Cedar Hollow residents who had come to witness, some curious, some ashamed, most unable to meet my eyes. The next slide showed Gloria's face, composed and confident in what looked like a professional headshot. Gloria Peterson served as a client coordinator for this network, Richardson continued. She personally orchestrated the theft of property valued at over $2 million from Madison Hall, a 72-year-old former county clerk and lifelong resident of this community. He listed the evidence: methodically dashcam footage of fake officers threatening me, audio recordings of explicit intimidation, the fraudulent affidavit of heirship filed under my name, bank records showing systematic drainage of my accounts, and Arthur's sworn testimony detailing years of coercion and blackmail. Each piece clicked into place like the components of a lock finally opening. The community had believed Gloria's story because they had never seen the other side. Now they were seeing it, projected on a screen in undeniable detail. Arthur asked to speak. Richardson hesitated, then nodded. My son walked to the podium on unsteady legs, gripping the edges for support. The room fell silent. "My name is Arthur Hall," he said, his voice rough but clear. 10 years ago, I was an alcoholic struggling to hold my life together. Gloria Peterson found me at my worst and offered help. Instead, she recorded me signing documents I was too drunk to read. She told me that if I ever contacted my father, she would release those recordings and have me arrested for fraud. He paused, swallowing hard. She isolated me from everyone I loved. She moved me to Arizona and monitored my every communication. For 3 years, I was her prisoner without bars. Arthur looked directly at the audience, at the neighbors who had shunned his father, at the friends who had believed every lie. My father did not abandon his family. He was caring for his dying sister while this woman stole everything he had built. I'm here to set the record straight." The silence that followed was heavier than any applause. I saw Martha from the diner press a hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Old Tom Garrett stared at the floor, shoulders hunched with shame. These people had turned their backs on me based on nothing but Gloria's word. Now they were confronting the cost of their credulity. Richardson concluded with the formal charges: fraud, financial exploitation of an elderly person, conspiracy to impersonate law enforcement, extortion, and witness tampering. Gloria faced a minimum of 15 years in federal prison. Marsh and Cole were looking at 8 to 12 each. Patriot Guardian Services had been shut down, its assets seized, its other clients under investigation. The network that had preyed on people like me was being dismantled piece by piece. After the press conference, people approached me hesitantly. Apologies mumbled, hands extended, eyes wet with regret. I accepted their words without anger. What good would resentment do? Now Martha hugged me and sobbed that she should have known better. Bill Thompson stood quietly by my side, the only one who had risked everything when it mattered. As the crowd thinned, a reporter approached with a microphone. "Mr. Hall, how does it feel to have your name cleared after everything you've been through?" I considered the question carefully. "Justice isn't about feelings," I said finally. "It's about the truth. The truth was always there. It just needed the right people to listen." Arthur appeared at my shoulder, and together we walked out of the courthouse into the pale afternoon light. Behind us, I heard someone mention that Gloria had been screaming in her cell all night, insisting she had done nothing wrong, demanding to speak to her lawyer about suing everyone involved. She still didn't understand. Perhaps she never would, but her understanding wasn't required for justice to be served. 3 months passed before I felt ready to return to the ranch permanently. The legal proceedings moved slowly, as legal proceedings always do, but the outcome was never in doubt. Gloria Peterson pleaded guilty to avoid a public trial, 15 years federal prison, full restitution ordered. Though the money she had stolen was largely gone, Marsh and Cole received 8 years each. Patriot Guardian Services was dissolved, its remaining executives facing charges in 4 other states. The network that had preyed on elderly property owners for nearly a decade was finally, irrevocably destroyed. I attended none of the sentencing hearings. I had no interest in watching Gloria receive her punishment. Justice had been served. Witnessing her downfall would add nothing to my life and subtract nothing from hers. Some victories are better claimed quietly. Arthur and I drove to the ranch together on a cold December morning. The iron gate Gloria had installed was gone, replaced by a simple wooden fence that reminded me of my father's original design. The Peterson Estate sign had been torn down weeks ago. In its place hung a hand-painted board that Bill Thompson had made Hall Ranch since 1952. Arthur helped me out of the truck, his grip strong and steady now. Sobriety suited him. The hollow-eyed ghost I had seen in that Tucson photograph was slowly being replaced by the son I remembered, quieter, perhaps, and carrying scars that would never fully heal, but present in a way he hadn't been for years. We walked the property together in silence, past the barn that needed new paint, past the fields that had gone fallow, past the oak tree where Margaret and I had carved our initials 50 years ago. There was so much work to be done. I had never been happier to face it. The community of Cedar Hollow came back slowly, hesitantly, carrying their guilt like stones in their pockets. Martha brought casseroles every Sunday, her apologies woven into each dish. Tom Garrett organized a volunteer crew to repair the barn roof. Even the young banker who had told me about my emptied accounts showed up one weekend with lumber and nails, unable to meet my eyes but determined to help. I accepted their efforts without comment. Forgiveness is not something you announce, it's something you live. These people had failed me when I needed them most, but they were trying now. That had to count for something. Bill Thompson became a regular presence at our dinner table. The friendship we had built over 50 years, now stronger for having survived Gloria's shadow. He never asked for thanks. He never expected recognition. He had simply done what was right when doing right was dangerous. That kind of loyalty cannot be repaid, only honored. One evening, as the winter sun set behind the hills, Arthur found me standing at Margaret's grave in the Cedar Hollow Cemetery. He didn't speak, just stood beside me, shoulders almost touching. "Your mother would be proud of you," I said finally. "She always believed you were stronger than you knew." Arthur was quiet for a long moment. "I wasted so many years," he said, Years I can't get back. I turned to look at my son, this man who had been broken and was slowly rebuilding himself, just as we were rebuilding the ranch. The years ahead matter more than the years behind, I told him. That's all any of us have. We stood together until the last light faded, then walked back to the truck. The road home stretched before us, familiar and welcoming, and for the first time in a decade, I knew exactly where I belonged.